All right, that was A Big Man in a Big House by Leroy Van Dyke. And now I'd like to welcome to the program the world's most famous auctioneer, Leroy Van Dyke. Leroy, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can, Paul. You're coming in loud and clear.
Oh, good, thank you. First I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you so much for appearing here on my radio program. It's a true honor to have you.
Well, you're welcome. I'm glad to be with you today.
And I know you're a busy guy, so I guess let's get started. If we could start at the beginning, if that's all right with you.
Alrighty.
Okay. So you were born on a farm in Moore, Missouri, and lived out there on a farm for a good portion of your life. Isn't that true?
Well, yeah, all of my early years were spent on the farm during elementary school in the one-room country schools, and then went to high school in Sedalia, Missouri. That's the county seat. It's also the home of the Missouri State Fair. After that, I stayed home and helped my father raising cattle and driving trucks, baling hay, everything it took to run a big livestock operation. And then from there, went to the University of Missouri at Columbia and graduated with a degree in agriculture with majors in animal science and journalism.
Oh, wow. Quite a variety.
Yeah.
And so how old were you when you first learned how to play the guitar?
Well, I didn't start learning chords on a guitar until I was about a sophomore or almost a senior, I guess, almost a senior in college. I had a friend from down near St. Louis, Missouri, that played guitar, and he taught me a few chords, and that's what started it. But I didn't really learn much about a guitar until I was about a senior.
So you had already been singing way before that.
Oh yeah. As a little kid, I sang in school programs and church programs and things like that, but I was not in it professionally until I finished college and went to the Army, came back and worked for a newspaper for a couple of years in agricultural journalism for a couple of years before I got a record out, and that was in 1956.
So who were some of your earliest musical influences?
Oh, they would go back to... Influences would go back to people like Red Foley, Hank Snow, Gene Autry.
Eddie Arnold?
Eddie Arnold, yes. He was one of my big influences. And also Roy Rogers was a big influence on me. Those are kind of the nucleus of my interest. Sons of the Pioneers, I really liked those people, and they had an influence on my preferences in music. And
do you remember your first public performance?
After I started recording, you mean?
Well, even before that,
I didn't really have a professional appearance before I recorded. I was not making a living at it, and I was not actively engaged in anything but just amateur, for the fun of it, performances.
Okay.
So actually, after my first record came out in the fall of 1956, I was living in Illinois, where I was employed by an agricultural newspaper, and I believe my first engagement was just in the upper section of Illinois, about 100 miles from Chicago, a little celebration. I don't think I got but $150 for it, something like that. But that was my first professional appearance, I suppose, after the first record came out.
And wasn't it as you were working as an agricultural journalist that you entered a talent show simulcast on WGN radio and TV in September of '56? That's
correct. That's what started everything. I'd heard about this talent contest, and I was living at the time in Princeton, Illinois. I was not yet married and lived in a hotel in Princeton, Illinois, and I heard about the contest. I went up there and auditioned for it, was accepted, came back and entered the contest, and I lost. I didn't make first place. I think I was about third. But by the time I got ready to leave the studio, the phone was ringing, and within 2 weeks I had a record out. Within 3 months, I'd sold 1 million records. That's what started the whole deal, was that talent contest.
So that was really your discovery point.
Yes,
if you had to pinpoint.
Yes, it was.
So it was after the talent show that you were contacted by Dot Records, the record label.
Well, yeah. In fact, that same day. a phone call came in to the studio that eventually got me in touch with a guy named Bob Smith, who was on staff with Dot Records. And then within 2 weeks, we had the record out.
And but that telephone call at the station got intercepted by a guy named Buddy Black, didn't it?
That's true. You've done your homework.
Well,
yeah,
okay.
I didn't know anything about the phone call at first, but I was contacted by Buddy Black, who was an announcer on WGN radio and television, and he fast talked me into a management contract, and then he returned the call to these people at Dot Records and said, "I'm his manager. You'll have to deal with me." So he cheated me out of probably $500,000.
Wow.
But I won because he's dead and I'm still alive.
So, in the process of preparing for the recording session, it was at Chicago's Universal Studios, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that's when Buddy had you sign some so-called routine papers.
Yeah, so-called routine papers at the door, and fast talked me into that signature, which gave him, actually, in essence, more than half of my song. Because he got all the performance royalties on that song for the first 25 years. There's no telling how much he cheated me out of.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the first time he did it, according to accounts later on. He had done that with some other people, too, so it wasn't an isolated instance. So
you ended up releasing your first recording, which was Auctioneer, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In September of '56, and
yes.
Within a few months it had sold, as you said, 1 million records. And
yes.
Yeah, I think it's probably sold about 3 million by now, hasn't it? Or probably more than that.
We have not kept an accurate count of it, but our estimate is that it's somewhere around 3 million by now, because it continues to sell. It sells all the time. We still get royalties from it, but we don't have an exact count on it.
But you actually wrote Auctioneer in 1953 while you were serving in the United States Army in
yes.
Korea, wasn't it?
Yes, I was a special agent in U.S. Army counterintelligence.
Oh, wow.
Attached to the 40th Infantry Division, 160th Regiment. And I was attached to that regiment as a regimental CIC agent. So it was I camped out over there for about a year in Korea.
And what inspired you to write the song?
It just happened. I didn't have any conscious effort or desire to write a song, but during the course of my work in Korea, I traveled up and down those dusty roads quite a bit, and one day, just out of the clear blue sky, I started having this idea about this song. The words and the music started coming to me. I paid no attention to it for a while, and then a day or so later, it came back to me again, and 2 or 3 days later, it came back again. And finally, after several times like that, I thought, well, somebody's trying to tell me something. So I went back to my squad tent, sat down with my guitar, and wrote the song Auctioneer, and that's what started the whole thing. I had no idea I'd ever be a songwriter, and I wasn't trying to write one when I wrote that one. It just came to me.
How many songs have you actually written in your career? One, Auctioneer.
I quit while I was ahead.
Wow. That certainly, if you're only going to write one song, which a lot of artists don't write any songs at all in the music industry,
yes.
That was a great song to write, because it's...
Well, it was different. I think the reason it was successful because it was so different. There'd never been another song like it, and I think it captured everybody's imagination when they first heard it. Even little bitty kids would hear the auction chant, and they'd really get excited about it.
It's very mesmerizing.
Yes, it is.